नमस्कार. रयत शिक्षण संस्थेच्या रयत ऑनलाईन स्कूल एज्युकेशन या प्रोग्राम अंतर्गत बायोलॉजी या विषयासाठी सुरू होणाऱ्या लेक्चर सिरीजमध्ये मी आपणा सर्वांचे स्वागत करते. आय वुड लाईक विश टू ऑल ऑन द बिगिनिंग ऑफ युअर न्यू academic year, that is 11th standard. Beginning of anything is always amazing. So here we are going to start our actual biology syllabus. Already you all attained previous lecture, and in those lecture there is a discussion on paper pattern of 11th standard, evaluation scheme, and bridging course. Bridging course contains interconnection between the school syllabus, that is syllabus of 8th, 9th and 10th standard with 11th and 12th standard syllabus. Actually this year means in 11th standard there are total 16 chapter, and I am going to start the first chapter, living world. Chapter first, living world. Biology is a science of life forms and living processes. Living world includes all the living organisms such as microorganism, plants, animals and human. This chapter introduces features of living organism. An earth is made up of biotic and abiotic components. Biotic components means all living things, plants, animals, human being, microbes. Abiotic components are water, soil, light. The question is, why do we call them living and how do they differ from non-living? Living things can move, non-living things cannot move. Living things grow within time, non-living things do not grow. Already we know these basic differences between living and non-living. As we know, biology is natural science that involves study of life and living organism. So let's find out more about basic living world. So 1.1, basic principles of life. The foundation of biology as it exists today is completely based on these basic principles. Actually, these are life processes, and these processes differentiate living beings from non-living things. So there are total 6 basic principles of life. The first principle is metabolism. As we say, life can work. So it requires energy, and that energy provides by metabolism. Then second principle of life is growth. Life grow and develops. Then third principle of life, aging. Then next principle is reproduction. Life can reproduce. Have you ever seen dirt reproduce? I don't think so. So life can only come from other living creatures. Next principle, death. And then the last basic principle of life is response to change in surrounding, or we can say is consciousness. Life can respond. Metabolism. Living being can take energy from surrounding, but for survival it needs energy and many chemical molecules. This energy in the form of food is transformed to maintain metabolic processes, and for survival, for requirement of energy, they perform metabolism. Metabolism is the term used to describe all chemical reaction, or it is sum of all chemical reactions. There are two types of metabolism. First one is catabolism, and then second one is anabolism. Catabolism means breakdown of molecule. So by this breakdown of molecule we can get energy. And then anabolism means making of a new molecule. So catabolism is in simply we can say it is destructive process, by breaking of molecule, and anabolism is a constructive process by making of new molecule. For example, photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, glucose is produced, that is anabolism. And in respiration, that glucose is breakdown, is the molecule of glucose breakdown in respiration, so that is catabolism. The second important principle of life is growth. The gradual increase in size, number of an animal or vegetable, increase in mass and overall increase in size of tissue is known as growth. If we see human being, so obviously there is a change in growth. It's exactly what? Obviously there is a change in a childhood condition, then in adulthood condition, and then next. So that is growth. So this happens with plants also. Then seedlings are there, then small plants are there, and then they becomes huge tree. So that is because of growth. But there is a point with non-living thing. When we see sand motes, so these sand motes are larger, smaller, then smaller and larger. Means the size of these motes become changed. That is because of just accumulation of sand. That is not growth. So only living organism shows growth. Non-living organism do not shows growth. Reproduction, the next important principle of life. It is very important feature of living world. It is the biological process by which new individual organism, that is offsprings, are formed or produced by their parents. Reproduction is fundamental feature of all living organism. Organism exist just because of reproduction. Life is formed from pre-existing life. This statement proves that reproduction is very important for continuation of species. There are two types of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction means there is absence of gamete, and in sexual reproduction, gametes are present, they fuse, they form zygote, and then next life. So these are two types of reproduction. There are some exception for this reproduction. Means in living world there are some exception. For example, mule and sterile worker bee. Mule, actually it is offspring of donkey and horse. Means it is hybrid of these two species. That's why they do not have offspring. Means this feature is absent in mule. Same with this feature absent in sterile worker bee. Actually these are honey bee. These worker bees are sterile, so they don't have ability to fertile. That's why reproduction absent in these worker bees. So these are two exceptions of reproduction. But this is very important phenomenon of living world, or this is very important phenomenon of life. Next to important principle of life, or next to important principle of living world: aging and death. First, aging. Aging is a process where organism becomes older. At a certain point, parts or organs lose their working capacity. This happens with animals and plant also, and they become older. So this is called aging process. Then the next principle of life is death. It is called end of life. Body loses its working capacity, so automatically metabolism gets stopped and organism dies. So these two processes are related with each other. So after aging, means at the end of aging, body automatically loses its working capacity, and because of losing its working capacity, they fail to perform and automatically organism dies. Response to change in surrounding. Again, it is important principle of life. Actually, it is very important or unique property of living being. When there is a change in temperature, our body feels those changes. For example, in winter season we feel cold, in summer season we feel warm. This is because of our body gives response to that particular stimulus getting from environment. Means getting from that environmental change. Means we respond to change in surrounding. That's why this is very important or unique property of a living being. It is depends on stimulus, means actually how we respond, it is completely depend on that stimulus we get from surrounding. If we see best example or known example that is Mimosa pudica, or we can call it is Lazarus plant or Lazarus झाड. When we touch leaves of this plant, suddenly they get shrink. Means plant gives response to our touch. आपण जेव्हा लाजाळूच्या झाडाला टच करतो त्यावेळेला ऑटोमॅटिकली त्याची जी पानं असतात तर ती पानं श्रिंक होतात. सो दॅट लाजाळूज प्लांट और दॅट मायमोसा पुडिका प्लांट gives response to our touch. So this is very important feature of living organism. Stimulus and response, these two are very important feature, and these are unique property, means response is very unique property of living organism. In living world there is a huge diversity in living organism, means there are variety in organism, or there are number of variety in an organism, is in plants, in animals. So million trillions plants and animals are present on earth. So if we study those organisms, or if you study the diversity of organism, for understanding or knowing the relation between living and non-living, or interaction between living means interaction between these organisms, obviously systematic study is very important because of this huge diversity. So for this systematic study, or for the study of this huge diversity, certain taxonomical aids are required. Actually this study is important for research or other kind of or other kind of things. So for this study there is a herbaria, botanical garden, museum and biodiversity park exist. These things means these taxonomical aids helps us for studying of this immense diversity or huge diversity of an organism. So this herbaria means exactly what? It is a specimen or it is a dried plant. म्हणजे जर आपण एखादं प्लांट घेतलं, छोटंसं प्लांट, त्याला प्रेस केलं, ड्राय केलं अँड देन माउंट इट ऑन अ पेपर, so that specimen becomes herbarium. So because of this herbarium we can study the feature, means the taxonomical feature of this plant. Then botanical garden means obviously it is collection of all type of plant, means local plant also, and then बाहेरचे जे प्लांट्स असतील ते प्लांट सुद्धा बॉटनिकल गार्डन्समध्ये ग्रो होतात. देन म्युझियम अँड देन बायोडायव्हर्सिटी पार्क्स, means actually these are taxonomical aids, and these taxonomical aids are very important for studying biodiversity. Herbarium, one of the important taxonomical aid or taxonomical tool for studying of plants. The word herbarium is actually singular form and herbaria is a plural form. The word herbarium was coined by Piton de Tournefort, but the art of herbarium is initiated by an Italian taxonomist Luca Gini. So this is history of herbarium, is how the word coined and how the art is, how the art was initiated by Italian taxonomist Luca Gini. Herbaria is very effective tool in taxonomic study. Herbarium is dried plant specimen that is pressed, treated and mounted on a standard size sheet. Herbarium. Herbarium is actually a preservation technique of plant. Herbarium is a plant specimen that is dried, pressed, and mounted on standard size sheet. Actually, at the lower right corner of that sheet, there is a label, and that label contains all the necessary information regarding to that plant specimen. Means the date of collection of that specimen, means the plant कोणत्या दिवशी कलेक्ट केलंय. त्यानंतर next, place of collection means from exactly where that plant was collected or that plant specimen was collected, and then classification of that plant means detailed classification of that plant, then लोकल नेम ऑफ दॅट प्लांट, जे लोकली त्या प्लांटला काय काय नाव असेल ते त्या हर्बॅरियम शीटच्या राईट कॉर्नरला मेन्शन केलेलं असतं. त्यानंतर नेम ऑफ कलेक्टर मीन्स हू कलेक्ट दॅट प्लांट स्पेसिमन. So this is very important information regarding to that plant specimen, and this information is given on right corner, lower right corner of that sheet. So actually हर्बॅरियमचं जर ते शीट पाहिलं तर त्या शीटवरती आपल्याला एक ड्राय प्लांट स्पेसिमन असं दिसतंय, आणि त्या ड्राय प्लांट स्पेसिमन जे आहे मीन्स त्यावरनं आपण लीफ वेनेशन कुठलं आहे, देन कुठले लीफ आहे, फ्लावर्स कसे आहेत ते सगळं डिस्क्राईब करू शकतो. मीन्स ॲक्च्युली टेक्सॉनॉमिकल जे कॅरेक्टर्स आहे प्लांट्सचे तर ते डिस्क्राईब होतात बाय हर्बॅरियम. दॅट्स वाय हर्बॅरियम इज व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट टूल फॉर स्टडिंग ऑफ टेक्सॉनॉमी, किंवा जी डायव्हर्सिटी आहे त्या डायव्हर्सिटीमध्ये सुद्धा प्लांट्सचे जे स्पेसिफिक कॅरेक्टर्स असतील दोज स्पेसिफिक कॅरेक्टर्स आर स्टडीड बाय दिस herbarium. In this picture, you can see number of herbarium sheets. In first picture, you can see the dried plant specimen. तर ॲक्च्युली इथे प्लांट्स जर पाहिले तर ते प्लांट्स पूर्ण प्लांट्स नाही कलेक्ट केले तिथे, पण त्या प्लांट्सची फ्लॉवरिंग ट्विक जी असते मीन्स ज्याला फुलं आलेली असतात अशी फांदी, छोटी फांदी, ती कलेक्ट होते, देन ती प्रेस होते, देन प्रेस झाल्यानंतर ॲटोमॅटिकली इट बिकम्स ड्राईड, अँड देन दिस ड्राईड प्लांट स्पेसिमन इज माउंटेड ऑन ए पर्टिक्युलर शीट. तर हर्बॅरियम तुम्ही स्वतःसुद्धा तयार करू शकता. जर तुमच्या आजूबाजूला जे प्लांट्स असेल त्याची फ्लावरिंग ट्विक जर मिळाली तर तुम्ही जुने जर्नल्स जे असतील किंवा जुन्या वह्या ज्या असतील तर त्या नोटबुकमध्ये ती जी फ्लावरिंग ट्विक आहे तर ती तुम्ही प्रेस करून ठेवायची. एक साधारण काही दिवसांच्या नंतर ती जी प्रेस केलेली जी ट्विक असते ती ड्राय होते, आणि ती ड्राय झाल्यानंतर एका शीटवरती तुम्हाला ती माउंट करायची. जे साधा थ्रेडने तुम्ही ती पॅक केली, बांधली थोडेसे 2-3 ठिकाणी, तरी ती जी शीट असेल दॅट बिकम हर्बॅरियम. बट तर फक्त एवढं नाही, त्याच्या राईट कॉर्नरला तुम्हाला तिथे इन्फॉर्मेशन पण लिहायची आहे. डेट ऑफ कलेक्शन, तुम्ही कोणत्या डेटला ते प्लांट कलेक्ट केलं आहे, त्यानंतर कुठे मीन्स एक्झॅक्टली कुठनं तुम्ही ते प्लांट कलेक्ट केलं आहे, त्यानंतर तर जमेल तर त्याचं क्लासिफिकेशन, त्याचं लोकल नाव मीन्स लोकली तुमच्या इथे त्या प्लांटला काय नाव आहे, आणि नेम ऑफ कलेक्टर मीन्स तुमचे नाव. असं तुम्ही स्वतःसुद्धा हर्बॅरियम शीट तयार करू शकता. इथे सेकंड पिक्चरमध्ये तुम्हाला ते जरा व्यवस्थित दिसेल जे हर्बॅरियम कसं असतं, आणि हर्बॅरियम शीट इम्पॉर्टंट का आहे किंवा हर्बॅरियम इम्पॉर्टंट का असतं. जरी ते प्लांट लॉस्ट झाले मीन्स जरी ते प्लांट नसेल तरी सुद्धा या फ्लावरिंग ट्विकवरनं मीन्स ड्राय फ्लावरिंग ट्विक और आपण त्याला काय म्हणतो हर्बॅरियम, त्या हर्बॅरियमवरनं आपण स्टडी करू शकतो त्याचे कॅरेक्टर्स. सो म्हणून हर्बॅरियम हे खूप इम्पॉर्टंट आहे टेक्सॉनॉमीसाठी, कारण हे एक स्टोअर कलेक्शन आहे, हे कलेक्शन आहे प्लांट्सचं. जर आपण बॉटनिकल इन्स्टिट्यूट जर पाहिले किंवा आपण बॉटनिकल गार्डन्स जर पाहिले तर त्या बॉटनिकल गार्डनमध्ये हर्बॅरियमचं एक वेगळं कलेक्शन असतं, आणि त्या कलेक्शनमध्ये नंबर ऑफ हर्बॅरियम्स तिथे त्यांची जपवणूक केलेली आहे. कशासाठी तर स्टडीसाठी, स्टडी ऑफ टेक्सॉनॉमिकल कॅरेक्टर्स ऑफ प्लांट. So that's why herbarium is very important in botany. In this lecture, we had discussion on life, the basic principles of life, growth, reproduction, metabolism, aging, death, response. So we already discussed these points. And then the first taxonomical aid, that is herbarium, हे आपण स्टडी केला आजच्या लेक्चरला. In next lecture we will study the remaining taxonomical aids, that is botanical garden, museum, biodiversity parks, zoological parks, and then cave. So next lecture we will see these parts. Thank you.